What's up, Hoof listeners? Welcome back to the Hoof Podcast here post week 17, headed into week 18. This is it, right? Last couple weeks, playoff picture coming together, and I am over COVID. So things are
Yeah,
feeling
good to have us
looking
both
good.
back, man. That's for sure. Yeah. But another exciting week of NFL matchups. I mean,
Oh, wild.
in 2 weeks, almost every single game has had playoff implications. And this close to the end, that's amazing to say for the NFL, right? We've said it a couple times, but that last playoff seed they added, the 7 seed, is really making things more competitive down the stretch here. And there's a lot of spots still open that we're going to talk about here going into the last week of the regular season, and a lot of things that could change. Even with our Bills from 2 seed to out of the playoff
Right.
scenarios.
Wild.
That's insane.
Yeah.
With 1 game swing. So it's unbelievable. And obviously it depends on outcomes of other games and everything. But what another exciting week of NFL football from start to finish. We had Saturday games, we had Sunday games, and it was, every single slate had some entertainment. That's for sure. Some meaningful entertainment.
Right. It seems like with the new system, the NFL is trying to make like week 18 more like a playoff atmosphere where divisions on the line, playoff spots on the line. We know they always schedule, a lot of rivalry games within the division matchups. So I think that's going well. Like, I'm really excited for week 18, and even week 17 was really phenomenal.
Yeah. And week 16, they were almost every single matchup mattered, which is amazing.
Yeah, so working well. I think, again, NFL wins all the time, right?
Yeah.
More viewers, more money, more excitement for the fans. It's just a never-ending cycle. But playoff pictures. Let's talk about the NFC first.
NFC, man, it's a mess. That's for sure. It's a real mess. I mean, starting with that first game of the weekend, that was meaning the not the Thursday game. I guess that was the first game of the week, was the Jets losing to Cleveland, which was meaningful in the AFC, obviously, for the Browns. But the Detroit-Dallas game on Saturday, that game, I mean, talk about ridiculous endings, right? The Lions come back. They go for 2 to win the game rather than kick the extra point to tie. They make it, but then there's a flag for the ineligible receiver because he didn't report, the lineman who caught it.
Right.
And then
that clip will be around forever now.
Yeah.
Right?
And the replay, you could clearly see he went up to the ref. But, that was kind of an unfortunate thing. The Lions end up missing the second attempt and losing the game. So that was a rough ending to that game, but it had such big implications for the playoff seeding in the NFC now, because that was 2 top teams. You're talking the 2 and 3 seed, Dallas
2 and 3 seed, right?
Yeah,
Dallas and games 11 and 5, right?
Yeah.
Could have been a lot different. Philadelphia falling to the Cardinals, right? Puts Dallas, kind of, in the head of the division. But really, they got 2 huge breaks. Should have lost that game to Detroit, or at least went to overtime and like coin flip will decide it, right? And then also, if they lost their 3rd game in a row, they're likely going on the road where they don't play well. They don't play as well. They're undefeated at home. But catch a huge break from the Cardinals, beating the Eagles.
Right.
So
that was
now Dallas just sitting pretty at the 2 seed, and you could play potentially 2 playoff games. If San Francisco loses somehow, you could play all your playoff games at home, right? So that really changes the landscape for Dallas, in my opinion. And for Detroit, I mean, they haven't had a home playoff game in so long. They're so excited for it. They're going to get 1. But, man, if they had 2, it's just such a wild, fun atmosphere. We know what that's like being Bills fans. I mean, 17 years, no playoffs. That divisional round at home is it's a huge atmosphere. I mean, wild card's great and everything, but the division and the championship games are huge. So that sucks for Detroit. What really sucks is it's the refs decide it, right? And that's what I hate. And it's not all on the refs, right? The Lions still had 3 attempts to score. Got a little crazy there going for it so much. You should have just kicked the
every
goal,
time. Right. They did it a couple times. I mean, they made the second touchdown that they went for it on a 4th down, but it was, I mean, I thought the first one, I'm like, just take the field goal. 6-7 on the, like, just take the field goal.
Especially after the penalty, you know what I mean? Like, you're back. It's like,
yeah.
I think it was 5 or 7 yards. Can't remember exactly.
Oh, you mean the extra? Yeah.
Yeah. but they still throw it in the last play of the game.
Yeah.
Right?
And they momentum. You think going into overtime, you're like, you just ran the ball down their throats. But he probably was thinking that defense is gas too. So if Dallas wins the coin toss, they're probably going to score and win the game too. But either way, it was a gutsy call with a lot on the line, and it Lions' way in the end, even though you could argue, are the ones
huge game. And this is exactly what people don't want, is the refs interfering with that. And finally this year, I think there is momentum to make some changes to the officiating, like big changes, to make it better, because it's just been a problem for too long. Over analyzing the rules, over regulating the game. It's just getting stale. It's been stale now for a while, but like it's getting real stale now. So, and I think the league is starting to recognize that. So I would expect some changes this offseason. But anyway, 49ers get the 1 seed, right? They're only 1 game up, so I think they didn't lock it in yet.
Right.
Cowboys Lions at 11-5. The Buccaneers sitting at 8-8. It's a 2-way tie there with the Saints and the Buccaneers at 8-8. So that comes down to those teams. Philadelphia 5 seed, Rams 6, Packers 7. Rams a game ahead, and there's a 3-way tie, like I said, at 8-8 for that last wild card spot. So Saints are competing for the division with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but they could also get into the wild card, with certain scenarios. Packers loss, Rams loss, and obviously they got to win. So, yeah, a lot of fun scenarios there.
Yeah, the bottom of this NFC, I mean, the seeding all over the place is we've already mentioned, right? San Francisco, pretty much a stranglehold on the first round bye, then 1 seed. But then from there, I mean, if Dallas loses and Detroit wins, Detroit's going to be the 2 seed, Dallas the 3 seed.
Right.
Tampa's currently that 4 seed, but if they lose and New Orleans win, New Orleans becomes the 4 seed. New Orleans currently out of the playoff picture, but can get back in. And then, the wild cards, if you're looking at Philly as the wild card or Dallas, right? If Dallas loses, Philly wins, they jump back up, and Dallas falls down to the 5 seed. The Rams have clinched, right, a playoff berth, and then that 7 seed is where it gets even more wild. Green Bay is sitting there currently, but
give Jordan Love some credit, right? Getting your team to 8-8. Receiver, Christian Watson's been hurt most of the year. Aaron Jones hurt most of the year, so I think really, we're really seeing what is Jordan Love, like what's this mean? Is he the next Aaron Rodgers? I mean, because they've had Favre, Rodgers, and now it's all on him. I mean, they've had good quarterback play for so long that I think the expectation is he should come in and play well. And it was a little shaky early in the year, but I think now, like, he's looking like he's getting the hang of things there, right? I think if you start getting some weapons for him, you might have something with him.
Yeah, I mean, that was what they were hoping all along for Jordan Love, right? And they kind of knew the way this season went, it wasn't ideal for, throwing him into the fire and being like, okay, are you the guy or not? And I do agree there's things that look good about him, but he's got to learn a lot more and have the pieces around him, obviously, as any NFL quarterback would, to reach his fullest potential and maximize, the ability that he has. He has made mistakes this season that have cost games too, right? Single-handedly by him. So those are the things that you hope he can clean up if you're moving forward with him as your franchise quarterback. And I think there's at least enough there to say, okay, we're definitely going to keep him going into next year and
sure.
see what we can get out of that.
Right.
See if this is something to build on moving forward, or if we made a mistake and going with him and sticking with him for so long as a backup and now giving him that job.
Well, you think about it, it's really his rookie season. I mean, he hasn't played. This is his first full season of playing, right? So, like, it's weird when you have the Green Bay system where they kind of sit their quarterbacks for 3 to 4 years, because we're so used to the rookie plays. We expect the rookie quarterbacks to struggle, but from year 1 to 2, you want to see a big jump. How's that work with Jordan Love? Is there expectation to see a big jump from, his first starting year to his second starting year? That'll be fun to watch, but can Green Bay go to Dallas and win? I think that's, I wouldn't put money on that. But yeah, they've been playing pretty well. I think Seattle's probably the better team, even though they really, that loss to the Steelers was very disappointing for them. It's a home game. You win the game. You're likely the team that's in the playoffs, and they just got beat. by Mason Rudolph.
Yeah. And I mean, look at the Steelers. They're still in it, and they came back from the brink of extinction. Their offense couldn't get a yard, couldn't score a point, couldn't do anything right. And now Mason Rudolph comes in, and that offense suddenly scored 25 plus points 2 weeks in a row. Shocking, right? When it really matters against opponents that were playing for something too, and yeah, Seattle, I would call that the second biggest, most shocking loss of the weekend behind obviously
and
Philly.
Seattle, to me, they're too good. They're too good not to be in the playoffs. Right?
I know.
In the NFC. AFC would be different in my opinion, but
yeah, and their scenario right now, what is it for Seattle? So in order for Seattle to get in, they need a win and a Green Bay loss or tie. And or a tie and a Green Bay loss or Tampa Bay loss. And or tie, which is tough, right? Obviously, the real scenario is that win. You win, Green Bay loses, you're in. And that's a good space for Seattle, as Green Bay has a tough matchup against the Bears this weekend. So that's divisional opponent. They've been playing well. They're going to know that they could knock the Green Bay out of the playoffs.
Right.
It's going to be crazy. Yeah. So Seattle definitely wants, Seattle definitely is in the best situation to overcome the odds at this point, even though they've backed themselves into this corner by not being able to beat an inferior team like Pittsburgh. Right. And they're playing, Seattle is playing Arizona, who, again, is coming off that big win versus Philly, the most shocking win of the weekend, and, can probably carry some momentum into that game against Seattle. So we'll see. But that's going to be, that's probably where I would see the most likely scenario in my mind right now is that in terms of who's in and who's out, I would say Green Bay ends up losing, falling out. Seattle goes in. But there are scenarios, obviously, then where New Orleans can still make it over Tampa Bay. And then that would leave on the outs the teams that are still competing, which is Minnesota, right? For the wild card, at least.
Right. The 7 and 9 teams.
Yeah. So
Bears, Falcons, Vikings.
They need an ultimate miracle, right?
I think they're all out now, right?
The Vikings, I think, are still in it. If they win and each of the 8-win teams, so the Saints, the Seahawks, and the Packers all lose, they would then jump into that 7 seed, I believe. So that's...
Well, the Packers have the head-to-head over them.
Oh, you're right. Now the Packers, so they should be eliminated, right?
Right.
They are not, as of yet, marked with the E on the NFL standings chart. So that tells me that they would have some kind of tiebreaker over one of those NFC teams at least. So over multiple. So in their scenario, no, because the Rams and Philly have already clinched. So there's only one available playoff spot in the NFC, and it's where Green Bay sits right now. So Minnesota must have the tiebreaker against Green Bay in order to not be eliminated, at least
and they
as
just
of
lost.
right now. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, so that'd be fun to watch. Those games will be great. But flip it over to the AFC. Baltimore locks in the 1 seed. Miami kind of treading water at 2. It could be a lot different story for them this weekend when they play Buffalo. They could swap, right? Go from 2 to 6. Bills would go from 6 to 2. That's a wild swing there. But the Chiefs sitting pretty at 10 and 6 at the 3 seed. Jacksonville, another good story that's really popped up lately because they've been at the top all year. Like you look at the playoff standings since week 10, they've been in their 4 seed. But they have a real shot to miss the playoffs here. They have to win at Tennessee or they're going to miss the playoffs. So that's a big swing for them as well. Cleveland locked in at 5, at 11 and 5. They no longer have a chance to win the division. If Miami beat the Ravens, they would have had a shot.
Right.
But that didn't happen. We talked about the Bills. They're sitting at 6 right now. And then it gets, again, just like the NFC, it gets a little crazy. But Colts sitting in the 7 seed right now, but they play the Texans this weekend. The Texans at 9 and 7 as well. And then Steelers still alive. They have to win as well to have a shot. But that's it. I think the Broncos, Bengals are eliminated.
Yes, right. So the most simple scenario here. So the teams we're talking about that aren't in, Houston is at 8 right now, and Pittsburgh is at the 9 seed. And Buffalo and Indy are at 6 and 7 respectively. But there is, again, besides the Miami Buffalo swing, if Buffalo loses, they have to have a lot happen, right? So
it's simple. It's the Steelers have to lose or the Jaguars have to lose.
Yes, right. So if they lose, we need one of those two teams to
Right.
win. But the problem is they're playing, Baltimore, who is already clinched, right? And is probably going to rest some starters, although their backups look pretty good against Miami too. So I'm like, oh, okay, maybe. And then who's the other matchup for week 18? Let's see here. Where are we? So that one is Steelers and Ravens is on Saturday night. That's the one that
and that'll be interesting to see. Are the Ravens going to rest some starters? Would you rest your quarterback for 2 weeks? Right. Yeah, that gets interesting. But really, the Ravens twos are good enough to beat the Steelers, in my opinion.
Exactly. I think that could ultimately happen. It wouldn't surprise me, but
I mean, they almost beat the Bengals last year and almost, got in the playoffs.
That's
that
right.
Way.
That's right. They were playing for all the marbles. Yeah,
that was a playoff game, right? They almost knocked the Bengals out, right? So
yeah, and this playoff picture still a little bit dicey with Pittsburgh and Houston. Houston's path is the simplest, right? Houston, you beat Indy, you are in. That's it, right? If they win, they're in. And that's a good place to be. If you're Houston, the way you're playing right now, I like them in that matchup right now. Although Indy is like the team that will not die. They have been pretenders to me all along, and they're still sitting right there with their fate in their own hands if they win, right? So, and they still have a shot at the division if they win and Jacksonville loses. That's a pretty unlikely space for them, considering where they started or where most thought they would be at this point in the season. Even me, who was very high on the Texans, I had the Texans finishing second in the division to Jacksonville with Indy behind them. So it's crazy that Indy has found a way to continue to score points, continue to win games that matter, and they're in the playoffs right now. But if they now need to beat Houston to control their own fate, I'm not sure if they can get in if they lose. Only a tie and a Jacksonville loss would get them in. So if they lose, they are out pretty much.
It's winning in, and if they lose, they're out, right?
Yeah. So that's the easiest. Indy and Houston, win you're in, lose you're out.
Just thinking if Jacksonville and the Steelers lose, it would have to be head-to-head. I think the Steelers would get in the
correct
tie, right? So yeah, so the Steelers could lose one and still sneak in, but that's all dependent on if Jacksonville loses. And the way the Bills get in that scenario is whoever wins the Texans-Colts game actually wins the division, goes to the 4, which opens up another playoff spot or the wild card spot.
Correct.
So the Bills, I think, would be the 7. They'd be the 7 seed in that scenario. So finally, there's some clarity, though. Like, we've been talking about these playoff players for weeks, and they've been like a huge list of things that need to happen, and you're just like, you know what? We'll just wait and see what happens.
Lots of games that matter now down in week 18. This is so fun to watch. And of course, because the NFL has the complete flex schedule, they set it up where all of the games that matter, leading up to other games are first, right? So it's not like the Bills are going to win and then not know, they're going to know, okay, you either win and you're winning the AFC East or you lose and you're out of the playoffs. So that's
one thing I like about the Bills game being the last game, right, Sunday night, is they're going to know, like, okay, if you lose, you're going to miss the playoffs, or you can afford to lose and you'll still get in. But I mean,
either way, I want them to win. That's for sure. Like, give me. There's no scenario.
That's gonna be a really fun game. Yeah, and like, Miami's thinking the same thing. They're like, we cannot allow the Bills to win the division for the fourth year in a row.
After the way this season has gone,
yes,
they might never win the division again if they don't win it now, because it's been a train wreck of a season really for the Bills and derailed. And even in these last couple of wins, it's not like things have been hot, right? I mean, we eked by a bad Chargers team who had the boost from firing the coach or whatever, but we made Stick look like, an all-world QB. And then in this game, again, we had to hold on to beat the Patriots, who were, giving up the ball like crazy in our territory. And so from the inside, as Bills fans, we know that, okay, this offense hasn't looked nearly as efficient as we want it to be. But the bottom line is, and I said this on the show, that you were playoff mentality already. Win in advance.
That way,
I don't care.
right?
Just win. It doesn't matter how ugly it is.
Yeah, if
just
you go
win.
back to the bye week, though, we were saying that anyway. Like, okay, you're at Philadelphia, you're at Kansas City, and then you're home at Dallas. That's at the time was a huge stretch. I mean, Kansas City, we've seen a little vulnerability, but I mean, they're always good, right? So that was bad. And you're sitting there at 6-6 going, we're going to miss the playoffs here. But what'd we say? You got to win 2 of the next 3 in those tough games. And then you got to find a way to beat all these bad teams, win the games you're supposed to win. And here they are. They did it.
Yes.
Right. And it's impressive, right? And it's credit to Sean McDermott keeping his team focused and resilient. That's not always easy, right? Especially when the offense has been struggling. They've been struggling a lot this year. And I know there's talk of Josh Allen there was talk of Josh Allen, maybe the MVP. He's still having a good statistical season, but
breaking all
you've
kinds
watched
of
all the Bills games the past few years, it's kind of it seems like a down year a little bit, right? And he still puts up 40 touchdowns, but it's like it just doesn't seem as smooth as it has been in years past. And I think that's really the story of the season is finding an identity, right? I think I've said this multiple times this season, but I think the Bills were getting hot in the season, mid-season, winning 13 games, winning, 11, 12 games, and then getting cold in the playoffs. At least that was the case last year. Maybe that year when they lost the 13 seconds to Kansas City, that was the year to win the Super Bowl. They were hot all the time.
We had all the momentum there. Yeah.
But that's hard to do year in and year out. So I think the strategy this year was let's just take it easy in the beginning, try to stay healthy, get hot in December when you're supposed to, and take that momentum into the playoffs.
Sure. And every team has injuries. All I've heard so far from Miami fans now that they know this is a matchup is, the Bills have already won this game because we don't have this guy and we don't have that guy and that guy's hurt and this guy's banged up. And I'm like, oh, please, man. We've been without Trey White, without Matt Milano, without all these guys, Daquan Jones, for 90% of the season. And now you guys want to complain because you've lost some guys? Guess what? That happens to every team. You're not going to get sympathy for that, right? Like, no. Okay, we had to go through the grinder from week 2 all the way through now because we lost key guys on defense mainly and, have had to work through those injuries and find a way to win.
Matt Milano being the biggest one, right? Like, the heart and soul.
Gone.
He knows the playbook inside and out. The guy's never thinking
cornerstone
on
playing, defense.
Right?
Yeah.
And he's just making plays all the time. So that one was huge. And that was, you could tell this season, that was the hardest thing to replace. Right? Because I feel like Sean McDermott can train a cat to play cornerback effectively in the NFL.
That is true. He's very good at that. Yes.
He's very good at developing
corners
in this system.
You got to give
the same for defensive tackles, who kind of plays beside Ed Oliver's,
yes,
they have a lot of depth there, and then they're effective with their depth.
But it's been cut and paste, right? You're like, oh, okay, well, we signed Linval Joseph. He's not ready yet. We'll put, Tim Settle out there who's flashed when he's limited, right? Tim Settle has been playing well when he's not out there all the time, but when he's out there all the time, he becomes a liability. So it's not good. And then Poona Ford, he's been inactive.
Poona Ford start.
Let's let him play.
Phillips
he flashes. Yeah. Jordan Phillips is injured. I mean, it's just been a rotation there at the D line. And now it feels like it's coming back together. Daquan Jones is healthy. We see this. When him and Ed Oliver are on the field together,
the run last week.
Those two together are just unbelievable. You looked at it at the beginning of the season. You said, wow, this is special. And then unfortunately we lose Daquan. And now he comes back. And now all of a sudden, boom, you're like, holy crap, these two together are amazing. And if we can have that going into the playoffs, that's going to be a momentum boost, even without guys like Trey White and Matt Milano.
Yeah.
So hopefully
that's been fun to watch too this season. But
and obviously we can't go without mentioning the emergence of Rasul Douglas, who they traded for after the Trey White injury, for a third round pick. Man, that looks like absolute gold now, right?
Well,
we weren't sure what we were getting. I mean, you're getting a decent player, but he's been an absolute cornerstone.
He's exactly what the Bills needed. Like,
it takes away the ball.
The younger corners were, they were doing what they needed to do, making good tackles, but they weren't getting the turnovers consistently that we've seen in the past, And Rasul Douglas, I think, brought that energy, like that turnover energy that we've seen Sean McDermott defenses be good at for years, right? So that spark, if you will, and he's got great instincts, and I think that was a great pickup by
I'd like to call him
Not real sure if the Packers knew they were going to be in the playoff hunt when they traded him, but it seems like they want a clean house. It looks like,
Correct.
Jair Alexander's going to be out of there as well. But yeah, back to 1 point, actually 2 points, but I'll start with the corners because we're on that subject. But, I said he could, Sean McDermott could train a cat to play corner, but he still can't train Kaiir Elam. I kind of forgot about him this year. Still active, but just
at least we know
injury.
That he was dealing with injury. Yes.
Yeah, and that's fair. But it'll be interesting to see if we probably don't see him at all this season, right?
Presumably not, right? Presumably they're happy with the way things have been going at corner, and I don't think they have a reason to change things up. It's nice to have some depth and to have him back to learn a little bit more and hopefully gain that experience. But it doesn't look like he's going to suddenly be active and playing a lot of snaps. I don't think, unless there's some crazy injury, I don't think he's going to be active on game day.
Yeah, I agree with
that.
That's
because you got better guys ahead of him. I mean,
you see what happens. Is it the system? I mean, does he get traded in the offseason? Is it, does he maybe make a run, flip it around and come back and be a good player next year?
To me, it seems like they're committed to him learning, right? They want him to come in next season and be ready to go. And even if it's not a starter, actually play meaningful football and contribute to the team.
Yeah.
Because they had the chance to trade him and didn't want to. And that's when we learned about this injury situation and he goes on IR and all of a sudden it makes a little more sense that, okay, maybe it's not just, this is one of the worst picks ever. It's just that he wasn't playing, because we saw flashes last year. We really did, of a great cornerback, right?
Especially in the playoffs, right?
Yeah. And okay, this guy could learn and grow and be something even more under Sean McDermott. But then it kind of was like this step back of, why is he inactive? What's going on? And hopefully that's a lot to do with the injury and he can, build on this moving forward. But it's the cornerback room is too locked down right now to rely on Kaiir Elam again.
Ben Trell, not Terrell Bernard.
Yeah. Bernard, or talking
Benford, Christian Benford, cornerback.
Always
mix those two up, but
I know, right? Yeah, Bernard had a great game though too.
Yeah, but Benford has that cornerback position locked down. I don't see any reason to, try Kaiir Elam over him, because right now with the way Rasul Douglas is playing, you'd probably have to put Kaiir Elam in the other side, right? It just doesn't make any sense this year, so I don't think we see him at all. And likely, why not get some value for him in the offseason? I mean, you got your guy, right? Rasul Douglas is back next year. Trey White's back next year. I think you give Kaiir a chance somewhere else, in my personal opinion. But and then the last point was the emergence of Terrell Bernard, right? A lot of question marks about linebacker early in the season. Dorian Williams was supposed to be the savior. Really, Terrell Bernard, I feel like in the preseason got forgotten about because he was injured. You didn't see him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, we thought Dotson's the guy. We're AJ Klein save us, right?
And where were we then? We're like, oh my God, anybody but Dotson.
Right? Yeah, right.
Now he's ranked one of the best.
He played a lot of snaps. He played a lot of snaps in the preseason, so you thought that was the guy. But no, Terrell Bernard's been he's really stepped up his game, and he makes plays all over the field. You always hear about leadership from Sean McDermott's press conferences and things like that. So that seems to be going well. So I think maybe you got a long-term linebacker here. What do you think?
That's the hope, right? Yes, he's definitely proven himself beyond belief to Bills fans this year. And it doesn't look like a fluke. This isn't one game. This isn't, whatever. It's a full season of doing this. And it's not easy. And this is the first season as the play caller, the one organizing things. You can only imagine that that's going to get better and easier moving forward for him, right? That he's going to learn the system, have it down even better, take more command. Not that he doesn't already, because obviously McDermott and the coaches saw that before any of us did, because they trusted him week one and said, here you go. We know you can do this. Do it. And he executed from the gun and has not stopped, and has really become a centerpiece of the defense in a literal sense. He's in the middle, but also, the figurative leadership stance too, for a guy who is, not necessarily, who is still young, right? He's not a veteran or a commanding, proven himself kind of leader. He's just stepped into that role and played well.
Yeah, I think he gets the most improved player award
on
the season. Really, you could argue save the season, because the Bills linebackers do a lot, right?
Yeah.
Matt Milano made a ton of plays in the Sean McDermott defense, and if Bernard didn't make that step, they would be in serious trouble.
Yeah,
I mean, we saw the Dotson and Dorian Williams exposed early on. So I think Terrell Bernard really, the way he stepped up his game, and also Dotson as well.
Yeah,
but really they're looking pretty good on defense.
And coming into the season, the big story was the Bills did not re-sign Tremaine Edmonds, right? So that was like, oh my God, what's going to happen?
Couldn't. They probably wanted to, but
they tried, but well, he got a hell of an offer from Chicago that
right. You can't.
I don't think they should have matched, and I said that at the time. But now that looks like, man, they're lucky they had this contingency plan that they trusted, right? And it's paid off in spades for us. But that uncertainty turned into a strength as the season went on, which is a unbelievable complete turnaround from where we thought it was going to be, especially with all these other injuries that we've talked about. He's had to play an even bigger role. Once Matt Milano went down, that makes his role even more important because, Milano was just the guy who you always knew was going to be where he needed to be and get done what he needed to get done. Now that put a lot more pressure on Bernard, and he was still able to excel. So imagine this defense with those two at full health next season. That's going to be an exciting part to watch for this defense. But we got to get through the rest of this season and the postseason. These guys got to step up in the postseason as well, because
we'll see how it ends. But
I'm glad we're talking about this now, because we don't want these guys to go unsung, right? In the playoffs, somebody's going to make some big play. I don't care who it is, special team or whatever, and they're going to be the darling and they're going to get the praise. But all these other guys contributed big time for us to be where we're at right now and to be, playing for this division win in week 18. So yeah, it should be exciting, but I'm glad we're giving some praises out now.
Yeah, it's a fun time, right? You were here. You have a chance at the 2 seed. We're happy. Might not be the case next week. You don't know. You just don't know.
It's not a given. No matter what's going on with the Dolphins, it's not
Jason
a given.
M., welcome back to the show. Good to see you, buddy. Keeping Bernard overpaying Edmonds and stealing Douglas has shown that bean magic, in case anyone forgot about it. We did forget about it a little bit. And that's without even mentioning Leonard Floyd, which is very true. Leonard Floyd's been huge.
Best pass rusher on the team, most consistent.
Leonard Floyd's interesting to me because I don't know if he's back next year, right? He's played so well. He's going to get a big contract somewhere.
But then Epinesa is a free agent as well. So you have to make
which
right now Edge is going to be a weakness in the offseason as well. But yet Bean is going to work his magic again. And I think ideally he tries to bring in another veteran like that to contribute. You're never going to – this is the most ideal scenario, right? You're not going to replace what you found in Floyd again, most likely. But if you can find a couple of guys who are veterans to contribute even 2/3 of what he did, that's a win in the book too. And then you have to replace the Epinesa as well if they're both gone, right? And you have to figure out how, the draft or whatever it's going to be. You definitely are going to have to address edge moving forward as well.
Yeah, the draft will be interesting because I think the offense is looking pretty good as far as the roster
wide receiver
going into next year. Sure, you need a receiver too.
Without
a
doubt.
Gabe Davis is back, right? That's a big question as well.
Wide receivers definitely need.
It's a receiver 2. It's not a receiver 1. There's a little bit of flexibility there.
But we got to, look at the last couple of weeks. Like we said, the drops or whatever, this passing game, there's something going on, right? Whatever went on with Josh Allen in this last game. The receivers contributed part of it. Dropped passes, the running backs too. Dropped passes, botched plays. It did not look like a great game for Josh Allen. It did not look like a great game for anybody really on offense. That's concerning. We're considering where we're at. Yeah.
But you're also playing, it's Bill Belichick, arguably his last time in Buffalo.
Yeah. And
you saw the interception play. That one we had a good view on, right? Alex Austin just tricked Josh. He pulled an old Ed Reed play, right? Where he faked like he was going to leave that open and swung back. So there's some of that, but
more about the mismatches, the overthrows, the inaccuracy. It's going over on Allen and the receivers. When it's accurate, they drop it. When it's inaccurate, what are you going to do? That's all on Allen. But yeah, it was not a pretty game on offense this game. Hopefully against Miami, we can turn that around. Obviously, Bills and Josh Allen play very well historically against Miami. But again, that's not a lock. You can't work on that. But yeah, I would say there's room to improve at those positions. Wide receiver for sure. Edge going into next season is going to be a concern, but wide receiver is number 1 to me. Still, without a doubt. You have to address that.
And you already know my stance on this, right?
Yeah, get everybody. Yeah, it's now we got to do that.
Arguably the most athletic quarterback to ever play the game. There's a couple other people in that conversation as well. Why not try to get 60 touchdowns, right? Set the tone, shatter the record.
Why not?
And carry that thing forever. And I think a Super Bowl will come, right? Those big game wins will come.
Mm-hmm.
How good were the Broncos when they broke the touchdown record? I mean, I know they lost to Baltimore in the playoffs, but it was a very close game, and they definitely would have won the Super Bowl had they won, right? So the point is, you got to go all in around Josh, right? And I think if you do take a first-round receiver as your number 2, also somebody who can maybe take over for Diggs in a couple seasons, right, as the number 1.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
That's also going to open up Diggs, right? It causes a lot more problems for the defense rather than just taking somebody who's average, right? Because they have that problem now. But anyways, yeah, it's been a great season, and we'll talk more about Miami on Thursday. Check out the Week 18 preview show. Comes out on Thursday night. Friday morning podcast drops, but we'll get way into this Miami game. I know everyone's excited about it, but that comes on our next show.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get into Baltimore a little bit. Baltimore wins the 1 seed in the AFC.
Yeah,
they've won 10 of the last 11. They beat San Francisco in San Francisco, which was huge for them. They're the best team in the NFL right now, right?
Record-wise, playing-wise, yes. I think that'd be hard to say otherwise since they beat a team like San Francisco and then a team like Miami. So they conquered the NFC and the AFC in 2 weeks leading to the end of the season going into the playoffs. So, and they controlled their own destiny pretty much the whole way through, right? And that's where they wanted to be. And you could say that they benefited from their division, losing all the quarterbacks in their division to injury and being able to overcome that. And certainly that affected the competitiveness, but you can't take away from what they've been able to do both on defense and offense. It seems like they're so well balanced in the fact that if their defense is having a bad day, their offense can have a good day and make up for it. If the offense is having a bad day, the defense can make up for it and have a good day. And when you have that kind of balance and ability, imagine when they're both good, right? Then the problem with that is there is the bust scenario where if one's bad and the other's bad, what's going to happen in the playoffs moving forward?
Right. And you got to love how the Ravens built their team, right?
Oh,
they are paying their quarterback a lot of money, and they're finding ways around that, like drafting talented
young wide
receivers. Last 2 seasons taking receivers in round 1. And that's a good model for the Bills, I feel like.
They're not afraid to trade pieces away.
Lamar's playing confident. He's still improving. He's still in the prime of his career. Still see him get better year in and year out. I mean, that's how you build a football team. You have a chance to go get a star linebacker in Roquan Smith, and they do it. They go get him. Right?
Yes.
They continue to draft Kyle Hamilton. I mean, it's just, they're just stacked all over the place.
Draft well, yeah. So, I mean,
if you want to look at an example of how to build around a quarterback and build a winning team, it's the Ravens.
Right, and build around a quarterback. Right, you're not building an offense with a quarterback. No,
right.
You have the quarterback, and you say, well, how do we make his skill set the best it can be, right? Obviously, we know they throw to tight ends, right? They have good receivers, but it's not like they're, totally relying on that. They still use Lamar's legs a lot, which is what you should when you have a Lamar Jackson. Yeah. And they've been able to make that work so well throughout Lamar's career. That's why he's won an MVP, and he's on his way for another one if, things work out here. He's at least one of the front runners this year as well. However, when we're talking matchups in the postseason and we take a look at the AFC, my prediction was AFC Championship, Baltimore was playing Buffalo in Buffalo, right? Now that scenario would be Bills playing Baltimore in Baltimore. However, I do still think that the Bills are a tough matchup for Baltimore, right? That we know Sean McDermott has always played very well, coached very well against Lamar Jackson, right? He's the one who figured it out to begin with. He's the one who showed people how to beat him, and then everybody kind of followed that playbook. Now Lamar has grown and adapted, but I have faith that somebody like Sean McDermott and that defense can counter in a way to control that and match up well against that defense as well to put points on the board. That's still a long way away. But
right, and with the Bills, they're one of the few teams that are capable of going shot for shot,
exactly,
score for score with Baltimore.
exactly.
There's just not many teams that can even say they can do that, right? So that alone, just having a capable quarterback, hopefully on a good day,
Yes, and I think that
makes it a bad match, or an even matchup.
the counter to that in the AFC is like, okay, so ignore the Bills for a minute. Now you've got teams that have clinched, right? Kansas City and Cleveland, right? Kansas City, their lack of offense is scary, right? Yeah, they have Patrick Mahomes, but if they're going against Baltimore, I'm probably taking Baltimore in that because Baltimore's more well-rounded and Kansas City has struggled to get to the finish line this year. Now you look at a team like Cleveland, dominant defense, miracle offense behind, Joe Flacco. But is that going to hold up against the Baltimore defense that takes the ball away? I don't know.
The Browns defense is
know.
different. They're on a different level this year.
Yes, they are.
There are if you want to call it a Super Bowl caliber defense,
Absolutely.
you don't see them too often, but I do think the Browns are one of them. And it's their secondary. It's obviously Myles Garrett, but their secondary is what the strength of the team is.
Right. So I think, again, if we're talking matchup wise, it would be, those lower seeds would be the first ones to play. So let's say, Buffalo gets the 2, Miami would then be the 5. It's going to be the 6 or the 7. That's probably, if they win, going to play Ravens in the first round, or the 4, which I think at this point
round
would
2,
be
right.
Yeah. When Baltimore plays their first round. Yeah. Yeah. After the wild card round. Yeah. So that would be possibly the Jaguars right now, or the Texans if they win. That's a good matchup in my mind for Baltimore.
The Texans beat the Jaguars if we're doing it right now, right?
Yes, yeah, I agree. So that would be, in my mind, that the Texans could be the team that the Ravens face, and that to me is a matchup that favors the Ravens. So we'll see how it all plays out. But
you want to hear my dream scenario on that?
Sure.
Bills beat Miami. Miami's the 6th seed. Miami beats Kansas City in Kansas City, and then they go to Baltimore and lose. That's the way Buffalo could easily get the matchups to the championship game and then go to Baltimore, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
That's dream scenario, right? Let them beat each other. Let the good teams.
So who do the Bills play in the second round in that scenario,
though? So let's see. First round, they would play the 7 seed, right? If they're the 2, that would likely be.
If you're in your scenario, that would be what, the Texans? I hope not. No, Texans would.
Depends if the Jaguars lose. Let's assume the Jaguars win. It would be the Texans or the Colts, right?
Man, I would.
They would have to go to Buffalo. So let's say Colts to Buffalo. Okay, Bills win. Who's left? Then you have Jacksonville. So whoever plays Jacksonville at the 4, which would be that with Cleveland at Jacksonville, you'd play one of those 2. The winner of that game would go to Buffalo. And
I wouldn't mind playing either of those teams, to be honest. Again, Jacksonville, that was a fluke when they beat us. It was because of all the travel and everything in Europe. We know that story. But I think we're the better team there. The Texans scare me more than anybody, honestly, because they have talent, man. They are a very good team, and they have that young energy that they've got nothing to lose going into the playoffs. They lose, it's not like an embarrassment for them. If the Bills lose, it's an embarrassment. You're supposed to win. So, yeah, exactly. Right. So there's something to be said there. But in your scenario, playing Cleveland or Jacksonville, I love that. Playing in the first round, Indy maybe, and Texans being out. Sure. I'll take that all day. And then the way you played it out, it would be Baltimore, Buffalo in the AFC championship game, which is what
it's all there. It's all there for Buffalo. And that scenario is very real, right? If Miami loses, they go to Kansas City. That's locked in.
Yeah.
If the Bills lose, I think they'll likely be the 7 seed, right? I think they'd end up being the 7 seed, if anything, or out. But in that scenario, you have to go to Miami again.
Yeah.
Right. That's the 2 scenarios that they're looking at. There's a couple others, very unlikely, but they exist. So this game's even more important for Buffalo for that reason, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to go to Kansas City again. I know they can go there and win, and everyone will say that, oh, the Bills are better, but it's just, you just don't know what could happen there, right? They almost lost last time. Just if you could just avoid that, it'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, again, great place to be if you're Baltimore. You get that bye week, you get to regroup, you get to see who your opponent is. We've seen that backfire for a few teams, but I think this is the type of team that will be ready when they play that first opponent, and depending on the matchup they get, I think it's going to be beneficial for them. And obviously playing at home is always an advantage. And then getting them to the AFC Championship game, there's a few scenarios that could play out. So that all of those scenarios of who makes it in now really come into play for matchups, which makes it exciting in week 18.
For sure. Yeah, so we got to watch the games, and we'll get you ready for the games on Thursday. Again, be sure to check out week 18, our final preview show of the regular season. We'll be carrying the show forward going into the playoffs, but every Thursday, be sure to check in to our matchups. All right, Anthony, we'll do your pick 6, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, it was another great weekend for my pick 6. Man, it was almost a perfect weekend, but close, but no cigar here, right? So 5-2 on the week, including the Thursday game. That was unbelievable. So we are really hot down the stretch. Since that week 14, my worst week ever, 1-5. Week 15, 6-1. Week 16, 5-2. Week 17, 5-2, folks. We are above 61% on the season for my picks. Almost 62%, I guess, if you round up. So unbelievable, really. Again, anything above 50, great. But for this weekend, I had the loss. I picked the Chargers to beat the Broncos. That didn't happen, obviously. That was a loss. But I had the Jaguars, Raiders, and Lions, all W's, right? Even though the Raiders and Lions lost their respective games, they covered the point spread. Jaguars dominated the Panthers as expected. My other loss was the second most surprising loss of the weekend, the Seahawks at the Steelers versus the Steelers, losing that game. Big surprise there. And then I had the 49ers covering at Washington. But a lot of my other picks that I said I was really close on making that 6 were wins as well. So it was a good weekend for picks for me overall. And we're really winding it down this season. Week 18 is going to be a little tighter because there are scenarios where certain teams could be resting players and all that. That's no fun in terms of making gambling picks. But anything can still happen. So we'll see. And I'll have that pick 6 on Thursday. Again, our final one of the regular season. And I will be doing my picks for the postseason as well. So still money to be had. Unbelievable year. One more week to go. Want that 6-0 though. Want that 6-0 bad.
Yeah. And this is your last chance to get it this week.
Yeah.
So again, tune in Thursday. Anthony has his pick 6 best bets of the week. He'll be dishing it out for week 18. Again, Tuesday, 7:30 or Thursday, 7:30. All right, that's it. It's been a fun ride. Here we go. We're gonna get you ready for Miami on Thursday, and
we'll be here.
What a fun weekend, right?
Yeah.
And didn't even mention the college football playoff, which was phenomenal.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, wow, college football, man, crazy.
It was wild.
Crazy scenarios. Yeah.
So if we had more time, we'd definitely get into that. But we had all off season. We're going to talk draft, a lot of draft prospects in the college football championship. We'll be breaking that down this off season as well. So thanks for tuning in with us. Feels good to be back, COVID free. And Anthony, thanks for filling in for me last week.
Yep, glad you're back, man. It's always good to have the team. So one man show is never nobody's countering my opinions. I can't.
Right. You have to do way more research.
It's tough. It's tough, but it's still fun. It's still fun.
But yeah, thanks for tuning in with us.
Peace.